So my cousin and I completely disagree about Avatar. I think it's a great film, one of the best of the decade, and he doesn't like it really at all, it seems. And he didn't really want to get into too much of a conversation about it when we were last hanging out together. But he sent me this Mike guy with Red Letter Entertainment or whatever it's called, his reviews of Avatar because he said that he really explored a lot of the same reasons why my cousin feels that it's not a very good movie. But I completely disagree, and so I decided to make this response to Mike's reviews. So yeah, this may not cover all critiques people may have of Avatar. I'm going step by step through Mike's and responding to those. If anybody has any other big points they'd like to make, feel free to make a comment or whatever, send me a message and I will address them. So yeah, now let me first be clear in stating that, I really like Mike. I think he's hysterical. I loved his reviews of the prequel Star Wars films.
Star Wars The Phantom Menace was the most disappointing thing since my son.
I thought those were just brilliant. He did a masterful job of really delving into the meat of why those films were such a failure, and even probably revealing to a lot of people the reasons that they may not have even realized before that they hated them so much. And he did it with comedy in a way that was really fun and really amusing. But I just don't think it's the same with these Avatar reviews, and here's why. I just want to say that right off the bat, you will never hear me try to defend Avatar as a unique story. I don't think it was intended to be a unique story, and I don't really think there are that many unique stories to begin with. Most stories are just retelling of older stories, or at least similar stories that they were based on. Most of Shakespeare's works were not original, if any of them. Most of the literature works throughout history are not original. Tolkien based his stories on Finnish oral legends and other things. So this idea of critiquing Avatar because it's not original is a false argument. It's not a valid critique of the film. And I might talk about that a little bit more later. The first few moments of his review literally are just spent with nothing but pejorative attacks.
James Cameron's Avatar was probably the worst blue movie that I've ever seen.
Which is fine. It's okay to throw out some pejoratives every now and then as long as you follow it up with something of substance. But he then brings in this weird bemoaning criticism of The Princess and the Frog, which from everything I've heard, I've not seen the movie, but a lot of my friends have seen it. They liked it. It's got an 84% on Rotten Tomatoes. It doesn't sound like it's that bad of a movie, so I'm not sure why he was using it in this context. But then again, Avatar has a good rating on Rotten Tomatoes too, so I guess he's just comparing two films that are popular that he doesn't like. He then goes on to criticize Cameron himself, saying that he has a huge ego. I don't know if Cameron has a huge ego or not. He probably does. He's a rich and famous director. But that's just a criticism, a pejorative of the man. It has nothing to do with this movie. So I don't understand why it's here. He then goes on to say that it's continuing the progression of filmmaking technology in completely the wrong direction. I don't know why he thinks that 3D filmmaking and the technology that Cameron spent years developing for this film is taking films in the wrong direction. He offers no explanation as to why he thinks this is the case. He just says it and then moves on. Well, that's not a valid critique. I've never heard anyone say that this technology is bad or boring or a problem in any way. I mean, this isn't like this is the end of filmmaking. This is just another technology, and there's no sense in trying to fight against this. It would be like the people back when, talkies first came out saying, oh, we don't think that's going to go anywhere, so we're not going to invest in these talkies. We're going to keep making silent pictures. Like, why would you fight against this new technological innovations? It's brilliant, it's amazing, and it's a lot of fun. And it does absolutely nothing to really address the core of filmmaking, which is still here in Avatar and will always be in films. It doesn't matter what technology you're doing. Storytelling is storytelling, and you're either going to be good at storytelling or you're not. Cameron's extremely good at storytelling, and Avatar is no exception. He then goes on with more pejorative attacks, comparing the Na'vi to Blue Man Group meets black people, and that may be funny to some people, but again, it's not any sort of real criticism. So I'm still waiting here for something substantial. Then he says this.
So that in the end, we all can get hit over the head with some kind of anti-technology, anti-military, and anti-corporate message.
So again, here, this is a very surface level understanding of the film. The movie is in no way anti-technology. If anything, it's pro-technology. The only way in which these scientists are even able to become these Navi hybrids and interact with them and even have a story in the first place is through the most advanced technology that they have. There's really no themes in the film that are either anti-technology or Luddite in any way. So I don't know why he threw that in. It seems to me just to be some, generic throw in because that's sort of this surface level assumption you make when you watch the movie. But really, it's not there. The movie's an anti-technology, and he offers no evidence to support that claim. The same is true partially for the idea that this movie is somehow anti-military. Yes, in some ways it is, but in other ways it isn't. At the beginning of the film, when Jake lands on Pandora and he's narrating as he's wheeling out of the plane, he talks about how back on Earth, these were Marines. They were freedom fighters fighting for, freedom and justice and blah, 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 or whatever. But now they're not. Now they're just hired guns for a corporation. That is clearly setting the stage for not making this anti-military. And in fact, a large part of the film is all about violence and militaristic reactions to things. The Na'vi are not doing sit-ins. They're not doing nonviolent protest. They end up fighting back through militaristic means against this corporation that is trying to destroy them. So the movie isn't really anti-militaristic. There is another line which I think is very poignant in the film where Jake says, I was a soldier who thought I could bring peace, but sooner or later we all have to wake up. That is a very strong message, but it's not necessarily anti-military. To me, that's simply pointing out the obvious, that you cannot bring peace if you're going to approach a situation from a warlike mentality. And yes, this obviously has allusions to current events. It's obviously making a commentary on the Iraq War, the Afghanistan War, whatever you want to say. You're not going to be able to bring peace to a region through guns and through violence. That is a message that is central to the film, I believe, and something that's very important for people to realize. It's one of the best messages the film has, but it's not necessarily anti-military. It's just anti-aggression, and there is a difference. And that's why, to me, this movie isn't heavy-handed. He says it's heavy-handed. Lots of other people do, but as I'm demonstrating here, it's because I think they're not really looking past the surface here. They're not looking at any of the subtext here, and they'll probably scoff at the saying that there's no subtext in this movie. What the hell are you talking about? But no, there's tons of subtext in this movie. It's right there. And yes, the movie is very anti-corporate, but I think that's a great thing. I think corporations are a terrible business model, and I could go into more of that later. But yes, this is very much an anti-corporate, exploitative movie, and that's a really good message, I think. However, it is not blind in this pursuit. Giovanni Ribisi, who plays the CEO of the company or whatever, who's pursuing the unobtainium, we get to a point in the movie where we can start empathizing with him. Yes, at first he seems like a cookie-cutter persona, and a bad guy and an idiot and a jerk. But towards the end of the film, you start to see the humanity in him. You start to see that he is actually regretting these choices he's making, but it is too late for him. And you also, through that sort of discovery, know that it's not really him that's the problem. It's the corporation that's the problem. It doesn't matter who he is. He's fulfilling the purpose of the CEO of the company. If it wasn't him, some other douche would be there, pursuing the ends of the company. You see that the CEO is a human who is fallible, who has feelings, who has emotions, who can feel bad about what's going on. And that's part of the core problems with how the corporate structure works, is it depends upon completely obliterating personal responsibility. Limited liability corporation. It's right there in the name. The whole idea of corporations is to avoid accountability, to avoid responsibility, to completely destroy competition, and to exploit as much as possible to maximize profits. And so, yes, this movie has a lot of that in there, and I don't really see the problem with that. If you think it's heavy-handed, well, fine, that's your personal opinion.